Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a couple of cards using one of the previously released Postage Collage stencil sets from Waffle Flower. They did just release several new ones in their July release. I am saving those for later in my Christmas card series, but I will have a link to them. I'll get to that. This one's using the Beach Days set that came out a couple months ago that arrived to me after the release. Everything was sold out. I've just been waiting because you guys know I love them. I will have a link at the end of the video in the end screen to my playlist using other various postage collage sets from Waffle Flower because I've done many videos. I had a lot of requests for this one. Finally getting to do it. If you missed my Sunday live stream, I did use other products from that release as well, and then I incorporated a couple of them into these cards that I'm going to share with you guys. And then yeah, I will have a list linked below the video, but I'll also have it on my blog, and on my blog it's a visual picture list, which is a little easier to navigate, with all the products Waffle Flower has released so far to go with the specific A2 postage collage set. They have other sizes they've released. There's the oversized ones that I've already done a video on. That'll be in the playlist. And then in their most recent release as well, they did also do a couple of, like, I think it was a Euro and a UK little postage mark stamps that you can get. So that was a nice thing as well, just to give more options to people. So yeah, did some stenciling, multiple types of splatter. What else is new? All the fun things. As always, I will, of course, again, have a supply list below the video. Supply list. Links all the supplies I used. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That's what helps pay the bills, fund the channel, all the things. And enough chatter from me. Let's get into making these cards. Alrighty, so I started off by die cutting some smooth white cardstock with the original Postage Collage wafer die. And then I have one of my grip mats, and I'm just using the little one because convenience. Really, convenience. So I've got my cardstock, or die cut cardstock, stuck to my grip mat, and then I'm starting to use the layer 1 of the Postage Collage Beach Days stencil. And you can't really see it on camera from the looks of it, but just like a lot of the other Waffle Flower stencil sets, there's etching one for the outlines of the die cut, so you know where to line things up. But then there's also like color suggestions, which I've discussed in other videos and that I just really like, because if you really just don't want to think, and especially sometimes it comes in handy when you're not exactly sure, you know, it's like, what is this? And it'll say like light brown here. So on this one, it was like sky, sand, water. And I was like, thank you. You know, just anything that means less thinking for me, I am a fan of. So for all my blending, I am using Concord and Ninth inks, and I'm using my Waffle Flower Shader 1 Plus brushes. And then we'll end up using one 0 Plus brush, like a little tiny one. I'll use that on the fries on the next stencil. And very simple blending, and my blending looks like a hot mess while I'm doing it. But these inks do smooth out as they dry, so I just don't worry about it, literally, because it just don't matter. It's going to be fine. So the second layer, I used a really light hand on, these will be like beach umbrellas at the top middle portion. I just used the same colors of ink and just a really light hand, and I was like tapping my brush off on my work surface just to make it really soft, just to get, you know, this is me being fancy. Just adding a little extra. And I did the same thing with these French fries, because this last stencil, it's open on like the detail on the fries and the little fry container. So this is where I use the tiny little brush, and I used the sunflower ink. And then for the fry container, so that I didn't overlap the color, I just like ripped up a piece of my little Post-it tape, trimmed off a little curve on the other piece, and then just stuck that on there and then held it in place, because there's ink on there, so it's not really going to stick. But just to mask off those little French fries, so I could add this darker red ink. And I'll have all the specific colors I used listed and linked with the supplies, as always. So once I had that done, the rest, super simple. Went in with the darker red on the one beach umbrella. I'm going to use the darker blue for the little water details and the other beach umbrella. And then I'll pull out some black ink for little eyes on the seagull and for the little silhouette of the sailboat on that bottom one. And all of this I did twice. I just didn't bother including any of that footage because it's repetitive, because I didn't do anything different on the other piece. So once I've got all of this stenciled, I wanted to make the stand have texture. So easiest way to do that is to add splatter. If you don't like doing splatter, you could use markers. You know, I would get like a lighter brown and a darker brown marker and a white gel pen and just do little dots. Would work perfect. That would work, and it'd be a little more convenient and not as messy as this, but you guys know I love me some splatter. So I use the stencils to literally mask off everything else, and then just scraps of my like grid paper that I use for random things to cover all the other open areas, because I don't want to get the splatter anywhere but the little sand portions of these backgrounds. And the first bit I used, I think it was like vintage photo. I was using a Distress watercolor pencil, and I wet my fan brush and then just use that with the pencil, and I'll do it again on here, and added that little bit of splatter. And then, as always, I was like in the zone and not paying attention to the filming, but I was adding white gouache to my little palette. And then I added a little bit of water to that to thin it out a bit. And then with that, I used my little tiny brush just so I could keep the other, like the brushes separate and not get them dirty. So I'd add the splatter with the watercolor pencil. So I'd get my fan brush wet, run it around on the pencil a little bit, and then just flick it off the edge of the pencil. Splatter. Love it. And then add my little white gouache with my other little brush, splatter that, lift it off, and I've got texture. So because these were two separate stencils for the different sand areas on these little backgrounds, I needed to dry this bit of splatter. I just used my heat tool for that because you don't want to lay anything on top of that while that splatter's wet, because then you could smear it, make a big mess. Not a good time. So I just sped up the drying with my heat tool so that I could pull out the other stencil, lay that in place, and then just move my scraps of paper around to cover up any of the other openings so that I just keep the splatter contained. But then I'm going to add splatter later that's not contained. Like I said in the intro, multiple types of splatter, because that's how we roll. So masked off the other areas, and then just did the same thing with my little fan brush and the Distress watercolor pencil. And when I do things like this, like directly from the pencil like this, I just let it sit and air dry after I'm done using it, and it dries in like a few minutes and it's good to go. Doesn't hurt the pencil. It's fine. So vintage photo splatter, the little bit of white gouache, repeat on the second one. Again, didn't realize I was basically completely shifting right off screen because I was in the splatter zone. You guys know. Anyway, after I added all of my little bits of splatter to create the sand texture, which love how that turned out, I then used the Beach Days stamp set to add the little there's cancellation marks. There's so many good little stamps in this. I love there's so many of these little stamp sets now. And I'm going to use the OG, like the original Postage Collage set as well. But first I just stamped some of the little cancellation marks. I love that Live Salty little stamp. And I'm stamping these with just VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. There's this beach chair. Love. And then of course there's the Mine sentiment. That had to go on there. It's a rule. It must. Seagulls, especially derpy ones, they are 100% like reminiscent of the seagulls from Finding Nemo. So yeah, mine, love it. So I stamped all those, and then I used one of the little value stamps from that set, and then some of the other ones from the original set. And all this I was just doing with my one of my multiple acrylic blocks. Not too worried about it. I think it is another reason why I love these Postage Collage sets, and making these is because you can literally get messy. You can smear things. You can make a mess, because if you're going to add the cancellation marks, things smear. They get messy. So it's like when you're encouraged to be intentionally messy. For me, I just find that really fun and a little bit freeing, and I love these sets. And there's something also, it's like I'm making my own postage. How fun is this? So, black splatter. Do you need to add it? No. But again, it just adds to it. I like it. So I used black gouache for this, stuck a bit on the palette, watered it down just a bit so it gets to a nice consistency, and then used my fan brush and added it. Not a ton, just a bit, just cuz. So I'm going to add a little bit of that, and then I changed my mind, add a little bit more, put the other one back in there, add a teeny bit more. Again, just why not? So I'm going to let all of that dry. And then my card bases are sea glass cardstock. And I cut down a couple of pieces because I'm going to have one in one orientation and one in the other. I decided to mix it up just a smidge. So I'm scoring those with my little Teflon bone folder, and then reinforcing that score with the side of the bone folder there. And then once those are scored, I'm going to take just one of these panels and I'm going to cut it apart. I don't do this very often with these sets because I don't know, I also just really enjoy, they're all connected, like a little sheet of postage stamps, but they can definitely be cut apart, So I just cut them with scissors, and then I got a little extra and was like slightly trimming down those edges just to, even though I don't know what I was thinking. You can kind of just leave it, but I made a little mess with all the little tiny paper pieces, but that was fine. So I trimmed all those down, set everything aside. For my sentiments, I'm using the Waffle Flower Birthday Wishes stamp set, and I just had a scrap of some red cardstock that I used my anti-static powder tool on, and that just keeps the embossing powder from sticking to anything other than the stamped image. And then I stamped the sentiment 2 times with just clear embossing ink, coated it with detail white embossing powder, tapped off the excess, melted that with my heat tool, let that cool off for a minute, and then I'm going to wipe off the anti-static powder with my microfiber cloth. And then there's a coordinating die set for these sentiments, so I'm going to use a coordinating wafer die, tape that into place so it doesn't shift when I run it through my die cut machine, die cut the sentiments. And then while I was doing that, I also pulled out, this was in an older release, this is the Sweet Plaid panel die. And it's one of my favorite things to do. I've talked about this in a lot of videos, is when I've got like A2 cover dies, that either it's a solid piece or it cuts something like this. I love cutting it from the same color cardstock, or if I'm doing a white card base, I'll just cut it from white cardstock. It's a great way to add a little bit of texture, a little bit of, extra without it being like super busy, distracting, etc. Just tone on tone. So I die cut the same sea glass cardstock with that wafer die, and then I'm adhering it to my card bases, and love. But I didn't stop there. But wait, there's more. I'm going to add more texture to this. Because once I get started with the splatter, try and stop me, honestly. So I just did really thin lines of craft tacky glue on the back of this die cut. The one that's going to go landscape orientation, you're not really going to see anything other than like the outer perimeter of it because the whole postage panel is going to cover it, but it's there. We know it's there. That's all that matters. So I'm going to add more splatter to these again, just cause. So I used a Peacock Feathers distress watercolor pencil for this one, and same thing, just got my little fan brush wet with water, and then you just flick it along the edge and it creates splatter. I end up getting like 2 really big splotches on one of the card bases, but it's going to get covered up, so I didn't care. I didn't care. I just wanted the texture, just that little extra bit. So splattered this over these card bases with my little fan brush, and then same thing. Set that watercolor pencil aside, let it dry. It's good to go. So I've got my sentiments, I've got my panels, everything's ready to go. Got to add some baker's twine. It's just kind of a must-have for me with these postage collage. It just, the stripiness of it just works. So I'm threading it through with this panel, just right through the holes between the little postage stamps, wrapping that around a couple times. And then, as always, you start the knot. I use my reverse tweezers to hold that little knot in place so I can make my little bow. It's like an extra pair of really tiny little hands. So it's holding it in place. I can fiddle, get it the way I want. And then once I'm happy with it, pull it tight, remove the reverse tweezers, pull it tight again, and then trim off the excess. And I've got my little baker's twine and its little bow. And then for this one, I'm going to put Simon's Big Mama foam tape on the back of this. So it'll just give it a little bit of dimension, but it's not very bulky because these are like, this foam tape's the thinnest on the market from, I have not come across any that's as thin as this. It just gives that little extra something. And there's those two big splotches I mentioned. But I'm fine with it. They're going to get covered up. It doesn't matter. So for the other one, I just wrapped the baker's twine around the card front. Wrapped it around, tied it, did the same thing. And then off camera, I had arranged all of these. And then I took a photo of it with my phone so that I could remember where I put them all, because I would have forgot, and I did forget. So I have my phone off to the side, like off camera, and I was referring to that because I wanted to put all of these. You don't have to put all of them on the card front, but I liked every single one and I couldn't choose. So I was like, they're all going on the front. I don't care. So that's what I did. And I just used a combination of craft tacky glue on some of them and then the Big Mama foam tape on a couple of them to pop them up on top of that baker's twine, because that creates a little bit of dimension there. And then once I've got all of those in place, I also use the foam tape on the back of the sentiments to also pop that up and give it that little bit of dimension. And then on the inside of the cards, I'm stamping another sentiment from that Birthday Wishes stamp set. And I'm just stamping that with that same VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink. And then, and also like not at all concerned about using an acrylic block. One, I've been doing this for over 20 years and I'm comfortable with acrylic blocks. But I also, if I messed it up, like I showed, the sentiments have like coordinating wafer dies. So I was like, if I mess it up, I'll just stamp it separately, die cut it, glue it on top. We'll be fine. I have a backup plan. But that, when I have the backup plan, of course it worked fine. So then I was going to leave it at that, but I couldn't resist. I die cut the smaller seagull die from the Inquisitive seagull die set because he matches the Postage Collage stencil. So I die cut the smaller one just from white cardstock. For the little eyes, rather than die cut scraps of black cardstock, I just hold the little piece with my die pick, and then I just colored it with a Copic marker. Super simple. So yeah, I did that. And then for the little beak die cuts, I use that same orange ink that I use with the stenciling. So this is the Clementine ink and my little blending brush, and just quickly did that. If I was doing more of these, I would have used, my grip mats, etc. to hold the pieces. But since it was just a couple, this is old school. Old school, having to hold things. So anyway, once I had everything ready, I adhered them to the inside of the cards, just straight onto the inside. Love it. Like, look at him. Seriously, they're so derpy. I just love it. So adhere those directly in. I use my little embellishment wand to adhere the individual pieces into place. And that, of course, finishes off the insides of these cards. So then my last little step was just to add a little embellishment, and I just used some little red, like, clay hearts, just cause I didn't want anything too blingy, I got a lot going on in these, but there's nothing like shimmery, no sparkly, nothing. I know, shocking. I always make up for that too, though, so no worries. But yeah, just adhered a few of those into place with the craft tacky glue, and once I was happy with where I had them, just picked them up with my little embellishment wand, stuck them into place, and that finished off these cards. So a lot of random steps, but there was a method to the madness, and they were so fun to make, and they're so cute. And then those derpy seagulls, love them. So like I mentioned in the intro, I will have a link at the end of the video in the end screen that has my playlist with all the videos I've done using the Waffle Flower postage sets. And then below the video, I will have links to everything I used. I'll have a link to my blog post because it'll be, picture links, a little easier to navigate. So all that will be in the description box below for anyone who's interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.